California, Governor Jerry Brown has signed the bill to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2022, which is the topic of our debate today. As we all know, the minimum wage was put into place during the Great Depression in 1938. It has gone from 25 cents, increasing at different times, to the bill that was just enacted that would eventually increase it to the 15 mentioned before. However, these wage increases over time have proven to be more counterproductive than productive to their purpose of supposedly stimulating the economy. Therefore, California should revoke the $15 an hour minimum wage that it recently approved. The recent increase of the minimum wage should be revoked immediately to prevent further inflation, the loss of many jobs for unskilled workers, and the unfairness it creates for businesses. Increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour will have substantial harmful effects. With raising the minimum wage comes a raising cost of living and inflation. As we all know, history repeats itself. The Pew Research Center page states in their article, five facts about minimum wage. Adjusted for inflation, the federal minimum wage peaked in 1968 at $8.54. That's in 2014 dollars. Since it was raised in 2009 to when it went to $7.25 per hour, the federal minimum wage had lost about 8.1% of its purchasing power to inflation. Subsequently, this was the same for every increase since 1938. So, what good does raising the wage do if directly following it will be an increase in the cost of living and an increase even in poverty? It also must be taken into account that the previous wage increases were over quite a span of time, and when they were increased on a yearly basis, they were increased at minimal amounts, 10 cents, 15 cents. If increases of these amounts cause inflation or the cost of living to go up, one can conclude that the damages to raising the minimum wage to $1 every year until reaching $15 will cause irreversible and have a counterproductive effect on our economy. For example, Investopedia said, a person preparing food or taking orders in a McDonald's would make about $30,000 per year at $15 an hour. Suffice it to say, raising the minimum wage to an excessively high rate would exert inflationary pressure on the economy, but increasing it to keep pace with inflation would only have minimal effect. It's quite simple. With raising the minimum wage, the employer is forced to charge higher prices for their products and services in order to keep their businesses open, thus causing inflation. Which leads me to my next point, that this wage increase will cause the loss of jobs for unskilled workers and jobs in general, and potentially actually lead to more poverty. Diana Roth, a former economic advisor for the White House, said that a higher minimum wage discourages future hiring. She then went on to say that if your employer hiring at $15 an hour, if you're an employer hiring at $15 an hour, you'd hire a different person, someone with more skills, a different type of worker, and maybe use different types of technology. The people most impacted are those who want to work but can't. And when you can't get your first job, you can't work up and get your second job. At $15 an hour, employers will be forced to cut employment in order to afford their businesses. They'll seek individuals with more experience and other qualities. Thus, the jobs for unskilled workers will begin to disappear, and the loss of employment and employment opportunities will push some families further into poverty. And if logic from previous cases is not convincing you, take financially troubled UC Berkeley, for example. As soon as the new minimum wage was in the near future, they took action. Townhall.com said in an article about the minimum wage increase, Nicholas Dirk, this was said in the Townhall.com, Nicholas Dirk is a chancellor of UC Berkeley. He sent a memo to employees Monday informing them of the job reductions and said they would amount to a modest reduction of 6% of their staff workforce. This equaling out to about 500 jobs lost to the new minimum wage increase. Just at UC Berkeley. Subsequently, Town Hall also reported that members from the Residential Student Services received a notice 2 weeks ago about a layoff, which may very well be the reality of many working class Californians if the recent increase in minimum wage is not revoked. I mentioned employers and businesses like McDonald's earlier, and it is this that brings me to my final sub-point, affirming that the minimum wage is unfair for businesses. As employers face the unfairness of a minimum wage for a low-skilled job, they are forced to cut down on hours, products, services, and in the reality for many employers, close their businesses altogether. Seattle, for example, made the decision to increase the minimum wage to $15 before California. They also would reach the $15 over a period of time. Currently, they are at $11 an hour, and the effects of the $11, not even the 15, is already having on businesses is of true concern. The business owner in Seattle said, with the labor pressure that are coming from this $15 eventual minimum wage increase, we are juggling with razor-sharp daggers. The business owner should not have to pay an unskilled worker and train them at $15 an hour to wash dishes or flip burgers. Rather, it should be an agreement between an individual and their employer, and the amount paid should be reasonable for the job being done to avoid unfairness. Hardy, the same business owner also stated he is making adjustments, trimming staff hours, opening 1 hour later, and closing 1 hour earlier. He's also considering whether to close some hours during the day. See, the formula that follows any minimum wage increase, and especially the one just signed in California, is quite simple. You raise the minimum wage, the cost of production goes up, and employers' ability to afford their products and services their employees are at current prices disappears. Subsequently, businesses begin to close or cut down on staff, inflation kicks in and employment rises, a very dangerous domino effect to our economy, and the only way to prevent further damage, California must revoke immediately the minimum wage that is to reach $15 an hour by 2022. For this reason, and the proof available to us from current day and from past.